Hey guys, welcome back to She Became Me podcast. So, this episode is for the month of June. So, we got a little surprise for you. We will be speaking with a male from a male perspective this time. So, we're going to continue our Living Well theme with living in your power with your purpose. So, let me introduce myself again. I am Lentina Rogers, your host, and I'm going to bring in my co host, which is Ronieka Howell.
Hello. How's it
Hey,
going?
good. How you been?
Been doing well. I'm
I
doing
know.
well.
I know it's been busy. It's been a busy month for me. So
It's been very busy, but we're here.
yes. So let's get the party started. So let's bring Yolanda J. Brown in.
Hey,
Hello.
Yolanda.
Hi.
How's it
Hey.
going?
Not too bad. Good to see you. Good to see
Good
you
to
both.
see
Yep.
you.
So it's been busy for you too, Yolanda.
Yes, it has.
Very busy month.
Yes. So Yolanda, as I was saying to our audience that we got a surprise for them. We will be having a male perspective. So we're gonna let Yolanda go ahead and give you guys the rundown on our guests today.
Oh, yes, this is very exciting. It is my pleasure to introduce Reverend Larry Walker Jr. He's a licensed and ordained minister and is an accomplished community leader. Through his brainchild, the Gideon Project, Reverend Walker is a servant leader who is experienced in community work and has a heart for working with under resourced and non resourced individuals, mainly the homeless. His unique perspective as a pastor, social worker, author, community organizer, and program developer has prepared him greatly for the work of the Gideon Group of North Texas. Reverend Walker says that he knows all kinds of people, the kind of people most people want to know, and some you don't. But more importantly, he knows the kind of people who know it's more important to be kind than to be known. Excited about our conversation today.
Yes. Hey Larry,
Guys,
Welcome.
glad to
Larry,
be a
welcome.
part of this.
we are so glad to have you.
Yes.
Yeah. So Larry, why don't you start off by maybe giving us some details on some of the projects that you're working on, currently working on, and then that way we can just kind of pull some questions out that our audience may be interested in hearing about you.
Okay, we'll be glad to. First of all, guys, let me let you know that I am a homeboy, that I am from Indianapolis, Indiana, homegrown. My family still primarily is in the area. I moved here in 1982 and several other different places, but have loved to be a part of the Dallas community here. Have been serving here now for over 30 years in a variety of different ways. I've been a pastor for over 30 years, been a community worker, social worker, proud to be the father of three great women, married to the same woman for over 35 years, and just doing all that I can to empower the community here in the DFW Fort Worth Metroplex for families and for individuals, and particularly men and those who are homeless, to be the absolute best that they possibly can be.
Okay,
Right.
man, that it sounds like you're busy, Larry.
We're always busy. Busy people, as they say, always find something to do, or it finds them.
Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
so you guys have some questions for look all these projects that Larry is working on.
Ooh.
Yes,
Shoot them at me. Shoot them at me.
um, so I think there's so many things that I saw in all the things that you've done. One thing that stood out to me is your book, The Preacher and the Street Prophet. There, and we're going to talk to the men today, and women, our women viewers. We're
Oh
not going to
yeah.
leave you out, but we definitely want to talk to the men today because I think, and even in your introduction of knowing the kind of people that some people want to know and some you don't want to know. So
Absolutely.
it lends itself to that title. Talk to us about what does that mean, the preacher and the street prophet. Where do faith and the streets meet?
Well, this was an interesting collaboration. A friend of mine An individual who actually went through one of my fatherhood mentoring programs. I worked with him for about 2 years. He spent a great deal of time in prison. And he was struggling to do what most of us do as men and even women. We're trying to find our source of significance, purpose, and why we're here. And so we were talking over several months about what it was that was his purpose and how he's going to fulfill it. And then what was the legacy that he was going to leave for his children. And he felt sort of unfulfilled. And we were talking, and he addresses a different sort of, I guess, community than I do. I come from a more traditional background, even though I'm in one of the most progressive Baptist churches that I know. I say I'm probably one of the most non-traditional Baptists that you're ever going to meet. And he meets the millennial, generation in a different way. Both of us were carrying the same message, trying to give that message of hope, inspiration, and encouragement. But he does it with a different vocabulary and a different way. And so we were trying to bridge that together and still accomplish the same purpose. And so as we talked about it, he continued to just write some different quotes and inspirational things that he had in his mind. And as I listened to him, I said, those are some pretty deep, words of encouragement. And so I wanted to write my reflections about what he said. And so in our attempt to do that, the result of that was through DNA Publishing. We were actually able to publish this book, get it out there. It's been well received, particularly in the DFW area, and then to impact some folks' lives. I'm just excited to hear that people pick up the book, that they then see that it has a real attachment to encouraging them. And that's what we're all about. We're trying to encourage people, whatever your situation, whatever your condition, just relax and live in it and be the best that you can with what God has already empowered you with.
Yes, that's good. Larry, I know that you've worked with the fatherhood program with men, with fathers. What is like a common denominator that you have seen with working with these men that make them run from their purpose? I know that they have to find that they find the person. Some of them have like an idea, but yet they ignore it and they run in the opposite direction.
Right. Well, in my full-time job, I work for Anthem Strong Families. And what we've been doing is providing fatherhood programs, research data for the government to show that, for the most part, fathers, particularly when given the correct set of circumstances, good home, a good job, a mentor, a coach, somebody who's positive in their life, that most of them do want to be good fathers. And the reason that a lot of men don't pursue their purpose with the passion that I think they ought is that there's so many systemic challenges and barriers that exist. In America, we have to look at the actual systems that are in place, and some of them actually create substantial barriers to men being even with their families. So a lot of times it's easier to fail and be conditioned to be okay with it than to go ahead and get up every single day, knowing that you may not achieve what you desire, but you're getting closer to your desire, and to get that empowerment, that sense of purpose that keeps you going and pursuing what ultimately will lead you to what's going to give you fulfillment.
Thank you. That's good.
Yes.
Very good.
So, so your fatherhood program, Larry, that's what you do. You said with your full-time job. Mm-hmm. So, where do you guys get how do you feed that program? Like, is there a referral or?
Well, in 12 years, we've served over 48,000 families, believe it or not. I tell folks that we are the best kept secret in the DFW area.
Wow.
Now, it's easy to find men, and we not only serve men, we serve the family, so we serve the women as well. Our emphasis is on the father because we realize that if we get the father, in most of the cases, we're going to get the family. And so our emphasis, we always say that the target is the family and the bullseye is the father. Right. So what we do is we reach out through churches. We get quite a few referrals. I work with almost every diversion court here in the Dallas area. We work with some of the treatment facilities. So you guys may not be familiar, but most folk here in the Dallas area know about the the John Crusoe Justice Treatment Center for low-level offenses. There's the VOA, Volunteers of America, which are
Mm-hmm.
men who were for felonies. And so they
Okay.
refer quite a few folks to us, and we work with them. One of the caveats for them being involved in the program is that as they complete what we do, which is a 12-week program of cognitive skills
Mhm.
and workshops, followed by another additional year of intensive case management, mentoring, and coaching, then they're able to get their sentences, in some cases, removed. They're able to get probation fees. So there's a big incentive for them to become a better person and to complete what we do, because what we've shown is when they do become viable, members of our community that contribute greatly and make a difference in the community in which we live.
Oh wow, that sounds like that's a huge impact on, getting them on path.
Hmm.
Okay.
And they get excited. And what I know to be true is, despite what society says, is that most men want to be involved in the life of their children. If they don't want to do it for themselves, they want to be a better person a lot of times for their children.
Yeah, that was my next question. So, is mainly to help fathers parent the child. They don't necessarily have to be in a relationship, be married, or in the home with their child. Is that correct?
That's correct. And what's amazing is you just sort of hit on a very key point. Most of the men that we work with, again, if they're in treatment, if they're in prison, they're not in the situation where they're having an impact every single day. And what men tend to do is we think that presence, presents, makes a difference. The things that we can give. And so
Yeah.
a lot of men think that they're not a good dad if they're not able to give. And we always tell them that their presence, their ability to be there, whether they're physically there or not, makes all the difference in the world. So all we want to do is to get them to connect with the mother of that child, whether they're in the home or not, for the sake of making the next generation a better generation. And what we found is that as we give them and empower them to be the best man that they can be, that surprisingly, that other woman will see a change and they will want to be more involved in the relationship, whether they, reconcile or not. They understand that he's making an attempt to be a better person, which in fact then makes him a better parent. And again, give them reason to want that person to be involved in the life of their child and the next generation.
Okay. So, when did you first start, Larry, on this mission of social work and mentoring? Had this been something like you've always wanted to do, or how did you get there?
Well, it is always that sort of light that goes off one day that you never anticipated.
Mhm.
Everything that I've done most of my life was designed to build around a foundation that was business related, because that's what I was doing. I was in corporate America, the
Okay.
manager, doing various different things. And it's sort of all of one day, I guess God sort of spoke to me and sort of pushed me to where he already had me, which was doing ministry.
Mhm.
I was doing it without a license, if you would say.
Yeah.
And so for 30 years, I've been doing sort of social justice and social interactions, trying to, again, meet the people on the streets, wherever they are,
Okay.
helping them to do the non-traditional things, to be able to worship, even if they're not in a traditional church.
Right.
So 30 years of this has been the bulk of my life, half of my life, in trying to make it happen and make men and families to be better than they are, when I meet them.
Okay.
That's great. That's good. All good to hear the plight of the father. I'd like to switch gears to talk about the plight of the homelessness.
Hmm.
So very a vital part of your work. And like here in Indiana, um, in the world of youth development, the term has now become housing insecure.
Mm.
Hmm.
And when you're talking, when you're working, would you please talk to us about your homelessness programs, but also, Larry, talk about the impact of your work with working with the homeless, because I think there are still, even with like we have homeless experiences that my church did at one point. There's quite a bit of homeless advocacy happening around homeless, but in my opinion, I think there's still a lot of myths around why people are homeless,
Yeah.
how they can get out of being homeless, if you will, how can they overcome the situation. And so will you just educate us?
Okay, I'll do my best anyway. You said some very key things. The vernacular, the vocabulary makes a difference, and so the terminology is changing slightly. And I'm going to go, and if I go back and forth, just know that I'm talking about the same community because I like to call them our unhoused friends,
Mm.
but it is the homeless. And homelessness in America is drastically changing. The face of homelessness now is more families than it used to be. We're finding that folk, again, are in this situation for a variety of different reasons, and that there is no one catch-all answer to the situation that we find people in. One of the first things I tell people is I meet people all the time who are unhoused, and they're in one of two situations. They either have a homeless situation or they have a homeless mindset. And you have to understand the difference. Some folk, I really do believe, uh, in our best days and on our best opportunities, we're not going to do much more than provide them sustenance, keep them fed, keep them out of the elements for a short brief of time. But they're not going to be the folk that are going to want to progress. And you have to get to the heart of that in each and every individual, which means you got to invest the one thing that most of us are not willing to do, which is invest some time, because it takes a relationship to be able to get those folk to tell you exactly what is the heart of the matter of why they are in homelessness. I work with homeless folks, and they are all over the spectrum. I have doctors who are homeless,
Mm.
for various different reasons, and then I have folk who have a GED or no GED or no high school diploma. But it runs the whole gamut of people because people are homeless because the state of economics in the United States right now just varies so much in what is required, that we really don't know how to address the issue. We talk about living wage jobs, and then we have living wage jobs, and we don't have affordable housing. Then they're still in the same situation. So I battle that each and every day because we do find folk jobs that we consider to be livable wages, $15 and above. And then when we go to find appropriate housing for them, we find that there's just not enough housing to go around. Even when we're able to get subsistence type program, we get them into Section 8 or something like that, we find that there are not enough people who accept a voucher. So it's a real struggle to put the time and investment into every individual to move them from one station in life to another. And again, it just takes time. And one of the things I'm trying to do with the Gideon group is to get uh, politicians and the system to understand that even what we do at Anthem, when we do our 12-week program, it's a great start, but it's going to take at least an additional year of investment and time and energy with that person to really start to see a significant change in their behavior. And that's going to be able to allow them to give back to our communities and be viable contributing members. So again, the biggest thing is understanding that everybody is an individual, that people are homeless not by choice, but by circumstances. And so those situations all vary. There's families, there's individuals, mental health issues have changed the dynamics because there's not enough places for those who have mental illnesses to go. We sort of push them to the side. We've not provided additional, resources to step in. Now that we closed down several of the hospitals and those type things. And so we've almost criminalized homelessness. And that's what we do. So it's easier to lock them up than to provide them with the means to get out of what they're currently in. And we don't realize that episodic care at hospitals and all the things that occur because of homelessness actually cause us to spend quite a bit more money than if we would just invest the dollars that we do have available to address the situation. In Dallas, recently, we committed $70 million to help to end the homeless population here in the area by the year 2023. And that's a great start. We have a lot of tiny house communities and some other things that have been offered. And so I think we're doing a significant attempt to alleviate some of these issues, if not alleviate, to at least assuage them. And so we're starting to see very little push of the meter to the positive, but it is a move in the right direction.
That's good.
Yeah.
Mm.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I got a question about I want to, kind of get your opinion on this, Larry. And you're so right. The myths behind being homeless is people tend to think people are lazy.
Right.
They just don't want to work. They don't want anything. And since the pandemic has been around, we all kind of watch how quickly we can all become homeless
That's
if
right.
your job is not deemed essential.
Mm-hmm.
So quickly, people realize, a lot of people said to me, I think I need to get an essential job because I didn't realize that my job was not essential. So
Mm-hmm.
they didn't realize that I'm just, two paychecks away for most people. That this situation come up again, I could be homeless. So what I want to get your opinion on is how can we start having a conversation around people understanding that sometimes, like you said, it's circumstances that brings most people to a homeless situation. Now there are some people that no matter what you give them, no matter what you do, I think they some people really are lazy, and I think
Mm-hmm.
the problem is everybody's getting a bad rap because of those few people. But I generally I think most people do want what's best for their family, and I think most people want to be productive. And if you give them a certain amount of money that they can feel good about themselves and providing for their families, I do think they would continue. They would do that.
Yes.
So go ahead. What, in your opinion, what can we say or start saying or having conversations to kind of change people's idea about homeless people?
Well, it's hard unless you've experienced it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, too many people in power have never been in this situation, never
Yes.
had a glimpse of what it might be. One of the things I could recommend is the cost of poverty experience. I don't know if they have that in Indianapolis, but it's a day to go through an actual program and actually live in the shoes of those who are
Oh.
homeless. I'm going to tell you, some of the most innovative, creative, and strong people I know are the homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because believe me, to get up every day, not knowing what you're going to have to eat, where you're going to go to sleep, and all those things, and still get up with a modicum of power to be able to walk through whatever it is you're going to have to face that day. I mean, it's incredible. And
Yes.
again, I find that even some of the folks that I hire, the best employees that I think that I can find are those who have now come to value, the ability to work and to receive pay. Again, you said it, and you're right. There are some who are lazy and those kind of things. And I like to say that those folk are in a situation where they're not there yet. Not that they're not going to change. I just think in time
Yeah.
and in the correct time that all people will find that it's best and in their best interest to change.
Yeah.
We never change unless, the cost to not change is more than it is for us to make that change.
Right.
Again, the homeless that I know and have experienced over the last 30 years, for the most part, have a desire to do better and be better. It's just they're not equipped and they're not aware of the resources that are available to help them. And they need accountability.
Yeah.
I am
Yes.
big on accountability. I know that HUD and, housing first is the issue that we have on the table right now, that if we get people in the shelter, that they'll do better just by the fact that they have a place. And I believe that's partially true. I believe we need to have that availability. But again, with that comes responsibility. And
Yes.
so I believe in when you give somebody something, there's somebody else asking them, I asked you to do this, and then somebody else needs to be there on the other end of the spectrum saying, now did you do it?
Right.
Mhm.
And until we can have that, I don't think that, we're going to see real change. We'll see temporary band-aids on things like that. But
Right.
my emphasis is on long-term sustainable change. I'm
Yeah.
really not into short-term situations. I will, and we do get people off the street, put them in a hotel for a day or two. But
Hmm.
if we release them right back into the same situation, I
Yeah.
believe we've not really done them any justice. I think that the worst thing you can do is to infuse hope to an individual and then not produce or give what you promised.
Right.
They're worse off than you never gave them that hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Oh man. Well, So now you a minister, Larry. Tell us a little bit about your church and some of the things that you're doing there.
Okay, I'm at, excuse me. Currently, I'm serving at Christ Community Church in Richardson, Texas. I've had a long journey. I was licensed and ordained by Dr. E.K. Bailey at the Concord Church in Dallas Church, Dallas, Texas. Served at Concord for over 14 years. Then I was assistant pastor at a couple churches in the DFW area for 7 years, and then founded my own church and had it for about 9 years.
Mhm.
At the end of that time, came to the really sort of this enlightenment that what I really love and the passion that I have is outside the four walls of a traditional church.
Okay.
And primarily, what I was doing was serving the homeless and then women who had been abandoned. For
Oh, okay.
whatever reason, God continued to send me single women with children who had been abandoned, homeless, and that tended to be the focus.
Okay.
God gave me a heart for that, and so that became where the ministry was. I was spending a lot of time, we were spending a lot of time at the church, providing and feeding the homeless. We were spending quite a bit of money doing that. And my congregation even talked to us about that because, we could have spent that same money investing in a building, and for whatever reason, my focus had always been, it's not on the building, it's not on the facility, it's about the service, the community, and elevating the individual and the people. And my heart has always been to help and encourage, equip, and empower men, women, families, just to be the very best that they can be. And so at that point, primarily this became, my focal ministry. Even as I work every day at Anthem, it's still my passion, to meet the needs of the community.
Wow,
Wow.
you really just brought it all the way full circle with our theme. You are really living in your power, with your purpose.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
everything
it
that
took
you're
a long
doing.
time to do that. It's not something that came easy. It's not something that came willingly.
Hmm.
Even as I became a minister, it was the last thing on my mind. Absolutely went kicking and screaming. Once and I guess, that's what we always say is that, some went, some sent, but those that God calls really usually don't hear the first time.
Yes.
I struggled with that for a long time. And then when God showed me that my pulpit was not to be within a traditional church after being in that situation for so many years, it was difficult to sort of walk away from that, saying, God, this is what I know I've been prepared to do. This is what I've been trained to do, is to
Hmm.
stand on Sundays in these pulpits and preach to, hundreds and thousands and all that good kind of stuff. And then take me out of that situation where I didn't have a building of brick and mortar, and then the minister on the street corners and then
Yeah.
the hedges and the byways sort of was a real sort of eye-opening experience.
Wow.
And it's exciting that your obedience, you went with what God placed in
Yeah.
your spirit and on your heart. You didn't listen to the people, but your obedience to God, and he has continuously blessed you on your journey and given you the opportunity to continuously bless people. And it doesn't have anything to do with the brick and mortar, because ministry is so much bigger than that. So I commend you for that. Like that, it's amazing, because sometimes um it's hard to hear from God and be clear on what your purpose is, what he has calling you to do, when you have people that are surrounding you like, hey, but we have this right here. We're
Yeah.
supposed to
Yeah.
be doing this. So that's a beautiful thing.
Well, Ronieka, it's more importantly, it was listening to God versus the pull of the paycheck.
Yeah, I didn't want to say, I didn't want to bring money into it, but I mean, the
Working
people, the
in
money,
corporate
the
America, I was making much more money,
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
and to step away from that with a family, to raise. And at that time, I had three young daughters. All of them were accomplished and all adults now. I lost my middle daughter just last year, but the other two were very accomplished, and I'm really proud of what they do. And they're all involved in social services in some way or
Man,
another, also in social justice.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That's excellent.
Well done. Well done,
Yes.
thy
Well
good and faithful
done.
servant.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I know we're going to go to Shemale
Yeah.
here in a second. I just had And if, yeah, I don't know, Larry, you may
Mm.
think this is a loaded question, but my co-hosts know that I'm known for them.
Yeah,
Uh,
she always do this.
When you preface it like that, I know it is.
yes, because and I hope viewers judge me not, because it may be my own ignorance
No
and
judgment.
lack of understanding. But one thing in your bio, I read it and I was like, oh, forgot about HIV.
Mm,
So, in looking at your bio, where it said that you created before working at Anthem, you created a program for individuals, a
Yes.
housing program for individuals diagnosed with HIV.
Mm.
And
hmm
I looked at that like, I haven't thought about HIV. I haven't. Has America has is it me, or we don't? Is it? Do you feel or agree that we don't hear about it? Is it still a
No.
problem?
Yeah.
Is
it
Yeah.
Has it
absolutely is.
progressed?
Absolutely is. And for the sake of clarity, at that point, I worked for 5 years for Legacy Counseling. And at there, what we did was primarily for people and individuals who have been newly diagnosed. We had a housing grant and a housing program that we provided for them to give them a recluse, so they were there and they were able to live in the apartments. If they had no job, they lived there for essentially $50 a month. And if they did work, and one of the things that I was tasked to do was to help them to find employment, and then they were able to pay a third or 30%, I think it was at the time, of their income. But HIV is changed, and because I think it's not been given the same type of attention that it has in the past, because in some ways now we have drugs that allow folk to live and have almost life of normalcy, that has kind of been put on the back burner. But it's still real prevalent, particularly in the African American community. We almost sort of sweep it under the rug and act as if it doesn't exist anymore. A lot of folk who've contracted HIV has not necessarily been just because of homosexual activity or just because of utilizing, used utensils, drugs, all needles, those kind of things. Uh,
Mhm.
it's amazing how much ignorance there is around it, because heterosexual sex still tends to be one of the greater ways that people do contract HIV these days. So it's been changing. We've been better at managing it, and sort of the success has sort of made it less attentive, which is kind of sad because it's still a great grave danger in our community.
Me
Yes.
too. Thank you for that.
Yes. Thanks.
Good.
So, Larry, we have a part of our show that's called She Mail. And in She Mail is when our viewers send in questions and that they just ask our opinions. And that's all it is. That's our disclaimer that, we just going to give our own personal opinion based on our experiences and challenges that, we have maybe faced or, observed or professionally or personally. So I'm going to just read a couple of them, and we would like to invite you as well to give your opinion. So we'd like to, the guests to give an opinion as well. So one of the first ones. Let me get one here. Um, I'll read it off. Do you think traditional roles in a marriage or relationship are interchangeable? Do you think traditional roles in a marriage or relationship are interchangeable? So you can go ahead and take the first shot at that, Larry.
Well, again, I keep telling you, I'm non-traditional, and I
Yes.
work every way you can imagine. So when I think of traditional male and female roles, first of all, I think we need to define what they are, because in our generation it was one thing.
Right.
The men got the job provided. The men took out the trash. Somehow we got
Right.
to the point where we believe women were to wash dishes and cook
Yes.
and have the babies, all
Yes.
this kind of things. It's amazing what life does to you and how it changes some of the things that you might have held dear at one time in your life. My wife currently is in a situation where she has some health challenges. I've been the primary caregiver for her for the last 5 years. So the balancing act between doing what I do professionally, what I do in ministry, and then having a wife at home who I've got to constantly be attentive to has been challenging. So again, she's a great cook, great seamstress, all those things. And I've learned how to take on some of those roles and responsibilities, particularly if I wanted to eat. So so that's just sort of been eye-opening, but it also gave me great insight into really what it does as far as what it takes to do those sort of things. Because a lot of times, as men, I'm just going to admit, we take it for granted. We really
Yes.
do. You know, we don't know how blessed we've been when we find a woman that does all those things, you know, that keeps the house clean, that arranges our appointments and all those kind of things, provides the food, you know, takes care of the kids, you know, keeps them off of our nerves and out of our sight, and all those kind of things. It's amazing the juggling and the job that most mothers have to do, whether they're, you know, in a married relationship or not. Just being in a
Right.
relationship is a challenge. And so again, I've learned, if I wasn't non-traditional about what defining of those roles were, I've got children, again, they're millennials, and believe me, they've helped me to think differently about all this, because they say they ain't going for it.
Okay.
They got careers of their own.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay, ladies, what you think?
Well, I think that like the only role that's not interchangeable would be giving birth.
Okay.
And so I think that
When you get that one, let me know.
I think that any role can be interchanged as long, you know, as there's like understanding and just coming together to make things happen, no matter what it is. I mean, in my house, I mean, there's been things that I uh, didn't do in the past, but I do them now. Even as far as like learning how to like change a tire on a car, like, okay, that's just not a male thing. That's important to
Right.
know, like as a
Yeah.
woman. And so
Yeah.
as far as like teaching my sons about keeping a house, washing dishes, being able to cook, I teach them the
Yes.
same things that I teach my daughter, and vice versa. I teach her things, or her dad has taught her things that she should know as a woman that he would normally teach like the boy. So,
Right.
so I think that all roles are can be interchangeable, but only that one thing, that's the only thing as of now.
Yes.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add. You know, I just think that it's everyone's conditioning is different.
Mhm.
And so what you see is, I believe what you see is what you become. And so I was trying to relate the question to how I grew up and what I saw, and thinking, trying to look at my own marriage, because it's really, everybody is different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody's situation is different. And I think, and the same with my husband, when I think, like, he does not cook.
Mhm.
Now,
Mm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
yeah, it's not because he's not saying you better get in that kitchen and
Yeah.
cook,
Right.
but he never learned how
Mhm.
Right.
and never took an interest in it. And so, but when I got sick, down for surgery,
Mm-hmm.
he cooked a meal.
Hey,
So
There you go.
there you
it's
go.
about being willing
Yes.
to learn and grow and do
Yeah.
what you have to do. That's the way I look at it,
Yeah.
no matter what. And so
Yeah.
that's to me in any situation, and just being willing to
Yeah.
teach one another.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's just about being self-sufficient.
Mm.
It doesn't matter if you know, male or female. Every person needs to learn how to be self-sufficient, how
Yes.
to operate fully to take care of themselves before they come together with someone else.
Mm.
So,
That's
like
good.
you said, because you never know, your partner, your spouse may become ill, may become, you know, just unable for whatever reason, and you will have to do those roles. So I think, you know, it would be in our best interest for everyone to start teaching and interchanging those roles, you know, and just do away with like saying cooking is just for women, sewing is just for women, taking out the trash and changing tires and pumping gas is just for men. No, we all need to be able to take care of ourselves and be self-sufficient, period.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
Well, let me jump in
Amen.
here real quick and say one other thing, that even in agreement with even what the purpose of what we're doing here is, it's about purpose. You
yeah,
know, the family has a purpose as well, and it's to be supportive and encouraging and preparing of one another. And so
yeah,
I believe that as we do that, as we prepare our children, and as even women prepare our husband to be sympathetic and empathetic to what they go through, then that's all a part of making us, again, what you're saying, making us individually self-aware, self-empowered, and to be able to stand in our own strength, to understand that we're able to do this with and on our own,
Yeah.
but not to have to do that.
Yes.
You know,
Mhm.
and so we
Yeah.
do it by choice to help, to achieve our purpose, to be supportive and complementary one another, and then to make all of our lives better by doing that.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we got time to do another one or two. So let's see. The next one is, why is it so hard to say no? Why is it so hard to say no? Man.
Oh, geez. First of all, because we as men think that we carry this S on our chest.
Yes.
That's just the crux of it, is that we live in a world that tells us in order to be everything that we got to do everything.
Yes.
In 2008, I had heart surgery, quintuple bypass, and what
Mhm.
what showed after the surgery was that I no longer carried that S with any kind of
Mhm.
continuity. I
Yeah.
have to admit that I was not all that I thought I was, and couldn't do all that I believed I could.
Hmm.
So we want to, we like the accolades. We like
Yeah.
the pats on the back. We
Yeah.
get encouraged when people do that. So we go out and we do more and more and more and more until we get to the point where our bodies do what mine did, tell you that, look, you got to slow down.
Right.
Mhm.
And so we love the attention, we love the accolades and all those things. And so that's a driving force, particularly behind what men do and why it's so hard for us to say no.
Yeah.
Because men, we find our identification in what we do and how much we do. If you
Yes.
were to ask the man, who he is, he's not going to tell you that he's, compassionate and caring and all that. He's going to tell you that he's a person of authority, he's a policeman, he's whatever. He's going to identify with what that job is, and then
Yeah.
what the responsibilities are, and then what he's required to do. And so we're not used to even feeling as if we have the opportunity to say no. We feel
Right.
compelled to say yes to almost everything. And particularly as pastors, I want to say that's the biggest thing that I see in the burnout in most of the church, and particularly in the Black church,
Hmm.
because we typically have one pastor. I'm fortunate to have been in churches where we have staff to do the work of the ministry.
Yes.
For most churches, it's one singular pastor who has to meet the need of all the various individuals in the congregation.
Yeah.
And it
Amen.
really will wear on you to the point where you almost despise your own congregation. You know,
Amen.
I laugh and I tell this story all the time. I say, folks, look, I had a small congregation for a long time. I was at a church that actually had over 6,000 members, but also when I had just a few less than that, we had 200 members. I said, that's probably the biggest church that I could actually effectively pastor with what I do. Because, I told God, I said, God, these are your people. And after living and growing and going with our people, his people, I said, God, I'm ready to give you back your people.
Mhm. Amen.
Yes. Okay. What you think, Rodnika? Why is it so hard for us to say no?
I think that it's hard to say no. A lot of times it's because of just simply being people pleasers.
Yeah.
Not wanting to let people down, even when we don't have the resources, or even when our cups are not full, we will still
Yeah.
say yes, just so that we will not let that person down. Or just simply being people pleasers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that because I'm a natural giver.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you know that about yourself, it's very important to set boundaries because you will find yourself saying yes to things that you just really don't have the time, the energy, physically to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's your nature, that's what you want to do. But I just start being very, very conscious about saying, you know what, I have to say no. And then once I start practicing saying no, then I have to practice not feeling guilty about it because
Yeah,
then that's another level. So
Mm-hmm.
then
That
I don't
is.
feel guilty
yeah,
about saying no because I couldn't help because I want to help. But I think I've gotten in a much better space where I can say no and not feel guilty. So I would just say to the viewer that sent that question in, it's a process, and you just got to keep working on it especially when you get to the point where you got guilt and you got to just start getting rid of that guilt. There's nothing to be guilty about. You have to fill your cup first because you don't have anything to give when your cup is not full. So,
That's
Mhm.
so true.
yeah. So, well, I think we lost Yolanda. So,
Yeah.
um, let me
Well,
see. Well, I think we almost out of time here. So,
mm-hmm.
we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But,
Okay.
Larry, it was so good talking to you. You
Been my pleasure.
you
Yes.
just enlightened us and gave us so much in a short period of
Yes.
time. And I mean, I was wanted to tell you while you was talking about all these projects that you got to have an S. You got to have on a T-shirt on there with an S on it because you do so much. So you like a hero and a Superman, probably to so many, including
Mhm.
your family. But I'm sure in the community they see you that way as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's been my privilege, and just to serve. Again, I'm driven by that. My reward is that. So again, if that's what pleases you, then you'll find the strength to be able to, to do what you have to do. It can be taxing, but it's very rewarding, and just seeing one life changed.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
okay. Well, go
before
ahead. Go ahead,
um,
Ronnie.
I was just going to say, just a reminder to all of our viewers, just encouraging you to stay connected. Make sure that you go to our YouTube channel, She Became Me, and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button so that you can stay in the know of what's coming up next with She Became Me, what new things are happening with the She Became Me movement. And also, if you want to submit a question for our She Mail, to be answered right here on our show, be sure to email those questions to shebecameme2020@gmail.com.
And before we go, we'd like to thank our sponsor, DNA Publishing.
Yes.
Has been a great resource and sponsorship for the She Became Me podcast. So we'd like to say thank you, Denola
Yes. Thank
Burton, for
you.
all that you do.
Yeah.
And so it's time that this is where we come to the time where we say goodbye, and we'll see you next time.
See ya. Bye bye.
Bye.